Okay, so when you are writing a summary, there are three things that you need to include. And the first thing is your results. And they should be stated in written form and numerically. So, for example, you might say something like, as the pressure increased, the volume decreased. Numerically speaking, you might say something like, at 25 degrees Celsius, the volume was 320 milliliters. So you should be stating both in words and numerically your results, the important results. Don't tell me every little nitpicking fact, okay? Don't tell me 5 pennies weighed 8 grams, 10 pennies weighed 12 grams, 15 pennies weighed 14 grams, 20 pennies weighed 13 grams. You know, that's your data, okay? You want the overall result of what you found. Then you want to state your errors. Now, I'll first tell you what not to put. Before I tell you what to put. And I'm not sure, how much more clear I can be as to do not put these things down. So the first thing you should never put down is sig figs. Okay, sig figs do not make your measurements less accurate. They make your measurements more accurate. So you should never put down, well, some error in my lab were sig figs. No, sig figs are not an error. Balance was wrong. Okay? Those balances are not wrong. Those balances are very, very accurate. So don't put that one down either, Olivia. Do not put my calculations were wrong. It's kind of like putting into writing you're incompetent. So don't do that. You know, what is that Ben Franklin saying? Better to be thought a fool than opens one's mouth and remove all doubt. So I don't know if you know this, Shiva, but in my spare time, I like to keep track of atmospheric data. So I've been looking at atmospheric data over the past 40 years, and I realized that looking at my data, that in about 20 years, the temperature of the planet is going to be 5 degrees higher, Fahrenheit, which that means the ice cap will definitely melt. But I might have done my calculations wrong. What does that do to your research when you put that in there? Just yep, completely destroys it. So you never put that in there because if you think your calculations are wrong, then you shouldn't be publishing the paper. If you think your calculations are wrong, you should be going back and seeing where'd you go wrong. So you should never be putting into your lab that, well, my calculations were wrong. So what do you put? Well, here are some general guidelines. First of all, be specific. Okay. Do not, Bryce, say, I might not have followed the directions in the lab. Okay, which step? How? Okay, be specific. Do not say, I might have measured something wrong. Okay, not specific enough. Okay, be specific and think about what would have affected measuring your data. What would have affected measuring your data? And then last but not least, how to fix those errors. If you do number 2 well, if you are very specific about what your errors are, then doing number 3 will be easy. But if you're vague here, you're going to get this one wrong as well. Okay? I would say overall, your summary should be 1 to 2 paragraphs long.
Of how many sentences?
Well, how many sentences does a paragraph need? You need a topic sentence, right? That's 1. And probably at least a couple sentences, so 3 sentences would probably be the minimum length of a paragraph. I'm not an English expert. I don't know if you can have a shorter one, but usually 1 to 2 paragraphs. If it's longer than 2 paragraphs, it means you're including things that don't need to be there. Okay. If you include extra things, it's not wrong, Grant. You're just making more work for yourself. Okay. For example, did I put down what you learned from the lab? No, you don't need that. Did you put down whether or not you like the lab? No. That is something usually, elementary school or middle school throws in there, Sarah. I really liked the lab. It was fun. I would like to do it again. Okay, don't do that in college. Your professor will just roll their eyes. They don't care if you liked it or not. It's not wrong, but it's not necessary. Okay, so how about some examples? Let me hand out the magnesium hydroxide did not. I also learned the theoretical value. Does this need to be included in the lab?
No.
No. It's what you learned. That doesn't need to be in there. In the lab, my actual mass of magnesium hydroxide is far different than the theoretical. There's your result. Then they go on to state the actual numbers. Then my theoretical mass was 0.29 grams. I got 1.772 grams. Then they go on with the errors. There are a couple of possible errors that may have occurred during the lab. It is possible that the filter paper was not completely dry. It would have made the mass heavier. So when you are specific, it makes it a lot easier to come up with how you fix it. So if the filter paper is wet, how are you going to fix it? You dry it. So down here, It could be corrected by filtering the paper overnight. How about down here? Another possible error could have been a slight measurement error, but it is unlikely that a slight measurement error would have affected the mass. Is that specific? No. So you need to be specific. I would probably give this one a 4 out of 6. One paragraph, not too bad. You also want to try to write in the third person. Okay? So it is a lot easier to fix than you think. All you got to do is turn I or my into the or one. So for this, in the lab, instead of my actual mass, the actual mass of magnesium hydroxide was far different. Instead of I got 1.772 grams, you could do the mass of magnesium hydroxide was 1.772. So it's a lot easier than you think. Let me give you one more example here. So this one, they did the same thing. They put in there what they learned. Again, it's not wrong, it's just not necessary. In this lab, I learned how to calculate the specific heat of a metal. Down here, the results of my lab differed slightly from trial 1 to trial 2. Instead of my first trial, in the first trial, the calculations of determine that the specific heat of the metal I had, you don't even need that, just specific heat of the metal was. Therefore, the atomic mass of my metal, you don't need that. Therefore, the atomic mass was approximately 170 grams. Then in the second paragraph, they go through their errors. There's their topic sentence. As shown above, there are several sources of error in my lab. The first source of error was the fact that the metal was wet from previous classes. So if you're specific, it makes it much easier.